Then you're right, like, are you happy?
Come in. Come in. When I my turn. Yes. When I know from this services, because I was on my family, we don't take office. Oh, cool. On the mind. Okay. I am. Oh, that is it. Mas eu poderia ele. Esta boa que diz. Não usa como sugar. Na de Badalona, que vai ficar com a base de private studies. Oh, não é. Aí fica com galinha. Acho que eu estou. Mas o que é bom? Ukakona mwenyekiti maji sasa maji it's yeah first time na yeah oh completely okay oh unakwenda kushopping kwa sokini na nguo penzi ndio ndio sio yote jamani kana yangu oh yeah oh ina ngara lepa anani usachavi nikafura.
Good afternoon. Is the meeting on?
The meeting will start at 14:30.
Good afternoon, dear network. I just want to do a sound check.
Good afternoon, Doc.
Good afternoon, Aubrey. Thank you so much for confirming that you can hear me. We'll just do a bit of interaction for about 3 minutes, and then we'll start our session. So I can see we have 58 that have logged in so far. Our session starts at 2:30. So we still have a couple minutes. Kamfuamubanga from Creso. Good afternoon. Dr. Christina Chawanzi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Malilwe. How are you?
Fine, you sound tired.
It's a Monday, boss. It's just Monday syndrome in peace.
Go save those lives. Thank you so much for joining.
We are excited to learn today.
Your voice is flat. Are you really excited?
Wamhuma, I am hungry. Bottom line, I am hungry.
Hungry.
Mm-hmm.
I see. Okay, we have over 70 connections. I'll just call out some of the names that I can see. We have Chisha Makonko, Chile Shedu Chembe. Thank you for joining. Good. Dr. Muka Choka from Katete. Thank you for joining. So we have over 81 connections, and I'm sure we'll have some more as we go. So the time is 2:30 or 14:30. Today's date is 27th May 2024. Thank you for joining, for those who have joined on time. Today's topic is very interesting. We'll be looking at sexual gender-based violence, particularly looking at the forms, those signing the medical police report forms, as well as some court expectations. So we have quite a number of experts that are going to be able to help us. Sorry for that. As I was saying, we're looking at a very interesting topic today. SGBV, particularly signing medical police report forms as well as court expectations. We have a number of experts that are going to help us have a very rich discussion, and we will also expect participation from some of you, the participants, looking at this topic. So my name is Malilwe Muhuma. I'm a medical doctor at Chawama Level 1 Hospital. Our didactic presentation will be done by Dr. Jonathan Mwansa, ADH, I believe. And we have a number of experts. And I'll go ahead to just check if they're logged in already. We have Dr. Ginwala Rockaya. Good afternoon. Are you logged in? Dr. Banda, Dr. Lalik Banda. Do we have Madam Gloria Mubita? Chali Hambayi, NPA. We also have some nurse counselors, Mirriam, Phiri.
Yes, welcome here. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sister. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Thanks for joining. Do we have Sister Mirriam Kasabo? And last but not least, is a social worker on the panel, and that's Madam Isabel Nuyumbu. Madam Isabel. So these will be our panel of experts, and they will help us have a rich discussion, as I said. And we are really looking forward to it. For those who have just joined, we'll be looking at SGBV, signing medical police report forms, as well as court expectations. So from the panel of experts, we've got someone from NPA. So the Chali Hambayi, I can see that you've joined. Say hello to the network. So Chali, we can't hear you. I can see your comment in the chat box. Okay, please go ahead and change devices. Dr. Rockaya, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Yeah, I was also having challenges with volume.
All right, but we're glad you've joined us, and thank you for joining.
Thank you.
So just as reminders, we're having this meeting on Zoom, and therefore just to remind colleagues of Zoom etiquette, make sure that your device is muted if you're not speaking. And if you do want to speak, you can either use the chat box, give your comments in the chat box or questions, as well as you can also raise your hand and we'll be able to get to you and give you a chance to speak. So today's session we are going to have a didactic presentation right after this, which will be done by Dr. Jonathan Mwansa. We do not have a case today, so we tried to get one practical case to show how forms are assigned. Unfortunately, we couldn't get all the necessary things that we needed to for us to be able to present this case. Remember to mute your mics when you're not speaking. So for now, we will go into the session with Dr. Jonathan Mwansa. Dr. Jonathan, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, moderator. Good afternoon, colleagues. I hope I'm audible.
You are audible. Thank you. So I will begin to share from this end, or do you prefer to share?
I think it is okay to share from that end.
Okay, thank you. So without further ado, I think you can take us through the didactic presentation. You have about 30 minutes. After that, we will allow for question and answer session, because I believe that for this session, there's going to be a lot of questions that are going to arise. So we're looking forward to a rich discussion. Dr. Mwansa, please, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me begin by thanking the organizers for giving us this important opportunity to discuss the changes that have taken place in the ZP Form 32, the medical report form. Let me also thank the Zambia Police for having taken an active lead into these changes while consulting everyone else involved. I believe that Gloria Mubita from the Zambia Police Service is available, as well as the National Prosecutions Authority is also available, so that they can help answer certain questions that I may not be able to answer. I do not have any conflict of interest, I must confess. We can move to the next slide. Basically, this slide just gives us the objectives, an overview of the objective of today's presentation. First and foremost is to help all of us appreciate the changes that have taken place in the newly gazetted ZP32 form. I say newly, although it has actually been in enforcement in the last 10 months, because it was gazetted in July 2023. This being 2024, it has been in enforcement for at least closer to 10 months. Also to equip healthcare workers and other multidisciplinary members with who should sign the ZP Form 32, and also to help multidisciplinary team members to look at the roles of the factual or expert witness in the courts of law. The next slide basically just gives me an overview of this presentation in terms of the introduction, the signing eligibility, and what's new. And of course, who is a witness, or who is an expert or factual witness at the court. So maybe we can just look at a question even before we go into the presentation. Maybe we can have a poll question.
Yes, Dr. Mwansa. So our first poll question, we'll read: in the newly gazetted ZP32 form, which of the following are mandated to sign the form? There are three options. Is it A, medical doctors only? Or is it B, medical doctors even when not trained in MDT? Or is it C, all healthcare workers registered by the Nursing and Midwifery Act and or HPCZ Act and trained in MDT. So we'll launch this poll question. The question has been launched. So dear network, you can poll in so that we gauge what you know so far about the ZP32 form. In the newly gazetted ZP32 form, which of the following are mandated to sign the form? Is it medical doctors only? Is it medical doctors even when not trained in MDT? Or is it all healthcare workers registered by the Nursing and Midwifery Act and or HPCZ Act and trained in MDT? If you look at your screens, I think the poll has been launched. I can see people are answering in the chat box. IT, can you help us? Just confirm that the poll has been launched.
Dr. Muhuma, it has indeed been launched.
Okay. So, dear participants, please use the question that's been launched on your screens if you look at the poll. So I'll read the question once again. In the newly gazetted ZP32 form, which of the following are mandated to sign the form? Medical doctors only. Medical doctors, even when not trained in MDT, or C, all healthcare workers registered by the Nursing and Midwifery Act and or HPCZ Act and trained in MDT. We'll end the poll here and share the results. IT to just share the results so that we can just see how people poured in. Sorry, the gadget I'm using, I'm unable to see how many people poured in. So, Dr. Mwansa, we will go ahead with the presentation and appreciate some of this knowledge.
Thank you very much. And indeed, we have seen the results. I don't know whether we should answer the question now or we can answer it at the end of the presentation, but very interesting results that I have seen from the poll. Now, the signing eligibility for the new ZP32 form. The new ZP32 form now can be signed by any healthcare worker that has been trained to be a healthcare worker. However, these healthcare workers must also be equipped with knowledge to ensure that they are able to sign exactly and understand exactly what is involved in the new ZP32 form. So these are not limited to medical doctors only, because in the past, the form ZP32 form was signed by only registered medical practitioners. However, now it has been broadened to include all those healthcare workers that are registered under Act number 9 of 2009, which is the Health Professions Act, and Act number 10 of 2019, which is the Nurses and Midwifery Act. So all clinical officers, all clinical licentiates or medical licentiates, dentists, dental surgeons, medical doctors, midwives, and nurses, as long as they are registered by these two acts, because there are some people who are registered both on the Nurses and Midwifery Act and also the HPCZ Act, such as the nurse practitioners. So this is why we said and or, but either if you are registered by Act number 10 of 2019 or Act number 9 of Act number 24 of 2009. This is the Health Professions Act. So, and you are also trained in multidisciplinary management of GBV. You are going to be allowed to sign this form. Next slide. Now, the ZP32 form previously has had a number of challenges. So we had the ZP32 form, we had ZP32B, and later on, or in fact, prior to ZP32B, we had a modified version that we only used at the University Teaching Hospital, and later on, a few other hospitals were able to utilize that. All these old forms, as at 28th July of 2023, they were all dropped, and we only remained with ZP32 form that was gazetted as at that date. So all forms of assault, this does not just limit itself to sexual and gender-based violence, no? It includes all medical legal cases, defilement, rape, all forms of GBV, all criminal matter requiring medical legal evaluation shall be signed on this form. So the police will no longer use another form for medical legal purposes apart from this form. This therefore means that this form will not be limited to GBV. It will include those that have been involved in a road traffic accident and they require a medical legal form. This is the form that is going to be used. Or those that have had an assault, they've been assaulted. The only thing is that people will only sign to where it is applicable. The only other form that will be used for medical legal purposes is the form that the pathologist will use in case of murder. However, we will not concentrate on that because it is not within us. For us, we will restrict ourselves to this ZP32 form. It does not have any other addition to it. It's just ZP32 form. So the previous form is not in use anymore. We only have one form. And this form that we have has up to 4 pages. Let's go to the next slide. This new form has 10 sections, and these sections are from A to J. Each section has specific mandates, and all of us as healthcare workers will require to be familiarized with this form. As a healthcare worker, you are required to familiarize yourself with this form so that you are able to fill it in appropriately. And of course, training shall follow on so that each one of us are able to fill in this form. For those that are in universities like postgraduates and undergraduates, this form shall be taught within the curricula so that by the time you are graduating, you will have knowledge of this form. But for those of us that have already graduated, we will be able to ensure that trainings follow through. It is important that all necessary requirements are filled in. And I do know that it is not easy to be a doctor or to be a healthcare worker, because sometimes we forget that there are other people who are interested in reading what we write. So let us ensure that even as we write in a handwriting that is legible, and be mindful that the next person will not be able to assume what I wrote. I know sometimes when I write Panado, my closest partner reads that as propranolol, because I wrote it in a manner that you are only able to see a P and an L at the end of the day. Everything in between cannot be read. Let's ensure that we write correctly. As we fill in these forms, it is important that the forms are written in a plain language, a language that avoids unnecessary medical jargon, because then it becomes confusing and we are not able to communicate exactly and properly what we need to communicate to the next person. Where we are required to write brief notes, these notes must be brief indeed and very, very specific, deliberately so. Do not write things that you did not see. Do not write things that are going to cause ambiguity. Be specific and write as though you are writing a very short synopsis to someone who has never gone to medical school before, but should be able to read and understand. Next slide. Now, I will take you through section by section. I know the moderator has given me 30 minutes. I'm also timing myself so that I don't waste a lot of time. Section A is very important for all of us because it looks at the social demographics of the complainant. So we collect all the necessary information about the complainant. This, most of the time, if the form was issued at a police station, will be filled in by the arresting officer or the officer responsible for the case at a police station. And this must have the name of the client or the complainant, and the name must be in full. Some of us who come from the north, for example, have three. The first is the first name. For example, if I give myself as an example, my first name is Jonathan. My second name or middle name is Kaunda. And then my last name is Mwansa. But there are people who may only have two names, John Phiri. So their first name is John and their last name is Phiri. If the middle name is available, please write it there in that order. First, middle, and the last name. Where there is a next of kin, it is important that we take note of the full name of the next of kin. Now, we must all understand that in modern day, a contact address, such as a mobile number, is an address. So we need to ensure that we indicate the mobile number and also their physical address and relationship to the complainant. These are very important because in an event that the complainant is not there or we fail to get through to the complainant, then we can get through to the next of kin. The second section is a very, very important section. It too is filled in by the arresting officer or the officer responsible for the case. And this must be read and understood correctly because later on in future sections, we'll come and refer to this section as answering this question. So this is the formal instruction from the police requiring us healthcare workers to conduct a medical examination, investigations, and it assists us in the legal jurisprudence. So we'll come to answer this question very, very well. You must understand the question so that when you answer the question in part J, you refer to this question without making unnecessary mistakes. Let's go to the section C. The next slide, please. The next slide, section C, details the name of the arresting officer. It also details their rank. So here in Zambia, mostly it's the police department. So there may be a constable, there may be a sergeant, there may be a chief inspector, or indeed an inspector, or an inspector or chief inspector, or whatever rank and formation that they are. Police officers do have a number that is called a service number. This too is very important because it's unique identifier to the police officer. Then we are able to know that this is the officer that arrested the perpetrator, or this is the officer that was responsible for this case that we are dealing with. And it is very, very important that we familiarize ourselves with Section C and the details that are required thereto. We go to the next slide. This slide is very, very important for us healthcare workers. This section details of a healthcare worker that attended to the client. So this requires us to write our designation. So for example, if you are a general clinical officer, COG, you write, my name is Munanga, general clinical officer working at Mumuni Clinic, if there is such a clinic. And then you must write the date. And the date correctly so written. Of course, where there is a stamp, you ensure that you stamp it very well. I do know that sometimes health facilities, we have a stamp that is kept by either the sister in charge or the in charge of the health facility. That is the stamp that must be used. Now, the date of examination and the date of the stamp must be congruent, meaning that these two dates must be consistent with each other. We must ensure that we stamp it on that particular day. Of course, sometimes these date stamps are kept by other people. So it means that if you are going to stamp it tomorrow, you get to the actual date when this issue was attended to. If you are a female examiner attending to a male client, it is important that there is a second person called a chaperone. And if you are a male examiner attending to a female client, it is important that there is also a chaperone. This is in order to protect you, a healthcare worker, from unnecessary accusations. I'm sure today, even as we are listening to this, we are alive of a case that was reported on the media barely a week ago. I think it was in Kanyama, but within Lusaka, where a healthcare worker has been cited of inappropriate action against a person that went to seek service. So this issue of having a chaperone is important because then it protects us from unnecessary accusations and unnecessary issues that may damage ourselves. It is important that we record the details of a chaperone as well in this section, Section D. The next slide, please. In Section E, this section that looks at Thank you for that. Section E is a section that looks at a full examination of our client. This section requires that the details and extent of the injuries are clearly documented. And as we document this, we take care of certain specifics, such as the site where the injury is, if there is any. If we're able to do an age of the injury, we're able to put the age of the injury, the depth of the injury, if we're able to measure it, and the extent. And indeed, if there are other presence of deposits or discharges or whatever it is, we are able to show that, or any other observable matter that is around. In doing a general physical examination, we must ensure that we do not forget to comment on the general condition of the client and their appearance. And the general physical examination ought to be detailed from head to toe. This is important in order not to miss out anything that can be of importance for medical legal purposes. Any other physical features worth noting, including any identification or scarification marks, including tattoos, must be mentioned. So if a person has a tattoo of shabarangs on the abdomen, on the belly, we must be able to say that this person has got a tattoo of shabarangs, because then that becomes a unique identifier of that particular client. Next slide, please. In section F, this section now details anogenital examination. So in an event of sexual and gender-based violence, an anogenital examination must be conducted in at least 2 dimensions. The common one is the prone position as well as the knee-chest position, but sometimes we could do this examination on the left lateral position. And anything that we can measure, we must measure it. And if there is a possibility that we do have aids that can help us to retain the injuries in real time, we could actually use photographs, but we do not encourage people to use their mobile phones for photographing. This is because of being at variance with the law. Sometimes your phones may end up sending things in WhatsApp, on WhatsApp group, which you haven't instructed them to do, and it causes embarrassment. You can imagine you send anogenital photographs to your church WhatsApp group. So we don't encourage you to use your personal mobile phones, but if we do have an institutional one, then we could use it. In advanced centers such as the University Teaching Hospital and the most one-stop centers where CDC and USID is practicing from, I think they do have equipment such as colposcopes. So colposcopic photographs are encouraged to be taken, and these must be well labeled and well dated with the names of the owners of the photographs or identifiers, so that we are able to refer to them back. Details of the physical injuries on these people must be pasted on what we call the
Dr.
Are you able to hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. Sorry, I'm hotspotting. I'm in the northern province, so I'm hotspotting. Somebody called me on my phone, and that disturbed my network. I'm so sorry. So the photographs must be stored very well on the hard drive, as well as on a backup of your institution, so that you could always refer to them once required. And these must also be transferred to a pictogram, where if indeed you are in a remote area, for example, you are at which clinic can I go to? Say you are at a clinic here at Kamoto in the Eastern Province, where there is no colposcope. There you could just use the pictogram, which we have provided for. You label on the pictogram correctly. Next slide, please. Section G looks at, next slide. Are you able to take? Yes, section G, thank you. Section G looks at investigations that must be done. Now, what we have done in the new medical form is that we have included the necessary investigations that ought not to be left out. All investigations must be done from a point of view of medical legal, and the results must be attached to the report. Now, here we tend to encourage people to not just attach naked results. We could put them in an envelope and close them and attach them. We must indicate all required investigations that have not been done and the reason why these have not been done. In terms of gender-based violence cases, all GBV cases, we ought to do an HIV test. And we must do also a screening for STIs. These are sexually transmitted infections. I know surgeons may think that they are soft tissue injuries, but here we are referring to sexually transmitted infections. And of course, for all those that are in the reproductive age group and they are female, we do a pregnancy test. Now, a pregnancy test must also be done for those children that are Turner stage 2 and above, but not yet menarche. This is because it is possible that such a one can actually become pregnant. So if they come within that time, a pregnancy test is done, and then those follow-up prevention measures, which you learn later on elsewhere, are done. It is very important that these are done. Now, Section H is a pictogram section. Under this section, we indicate clearly all the injuries on the provided locator. We shade and draw where possible in a simple lineagram. And then associated photographs that we took using a colposcope or a Polaroid camera that we have in our facilities, or a mobile phone, a facility mobile phone, we can then attach them. But these must be labeled, well dated, and clearly assigned. We must write in the comment section the injury type, the age, the size, the depth, and extent of injury. Remember that a cutting injury obtained by a knife will be very, very different from a stabbing injury from a screwdriver, and will be very, very different from a shear injury because of a person that was being who was wrestling. So these will appear differently, and then we have to report them as such. The section I. The next, yes, section I requires you to do a summary. Now, a summary must be summary of the findings, those things that you saw. And these findings must be summarized as much as possible, so that in any case, you may actually just list them so that you avoid unnecessary complications. The last section is section J, which is the 10th section. Okay, before we go into that, we'll probably do a poll. Maybe let's do a poll so that people can participate.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mwansa. Indeed, a lot of learning is taking place. I can see the chat box is very busy, and Dr. Msonda is there as well to just take some of the questions, and all the other experts. We come to our second poll question, and it has been launched. So if you look at your screen, you'll be able to answer that question. It reads, indicate if this statement is true or false. It is important to clearly indicate the legal definitions, such as defilement, rape, or assault, when stating your final opinion of the findings. Is that true or false? It is important to clearly indicate the legal definitions, such as defilement, rape, or assault, when stating your final opinion of the findings. True or false?
False.
Remember to just pour in using your gadget, your preferred gadget. I can see some people are still answering using the chat box, but the poll question has been launched and you should be able to see it on your screen. So I encourage you all to use the polling feature And let's not use the chat box to answer the question. I'll read the question once again. Indicate if this statement is true or false. It is important to clearly indicate the legal definitions, such as defilement, rape, or assault when stating your final opinion of the findings. Remember to use the polling feature on your screen. So Patricia says she can't see. The poll hasn't been launched, IT. Just counter check that the poll has been launched. The poll has been launched. And I think what I'm viewing is the results. So 62% think that this is true, and 38% think that this is false. So for those who couldn't see the polling window, just ensure that you don't press anything else on the screen when we do launch the poll. So Dr. Mwansa, this is how people have voted. We'll close, IT just close the results, and we continue with the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, moderator. Section J relates to the question in B. Remember when we were talking at B, we had really emphasized on section J that a time will come when you have to answer a question. So section J asks a question whether your findings are consistent with the alleged circumstances or not. Now, you must state why positive or negative findings support your professional opinion. So basically, the professional opinion here is your diagnosis of your findings. And remember, at this time, you are examining, having, of course, in mind that you took a history, which we haven't looked at in this presentation today. So as you answer the question, you must say whether this question, your findings are consistent with the circumstances in section B or not consistent with the alleged circumstances in section B. Now, healthcare workers, even if I know that today we have a number of healthcare workers that are also legal practitioners, it is important to avoid entangling ourselves in legal issues. So certain definitions are not for us to use. We ought to ensure that we avoid the unnecessary entanglement with the legal aspect of it. So we cannot say this is rape. Neither can we say this is defilement. Nor can we say this is assault. We leave that to our colleagues, Mrs. Hambayi and her team, to say that was defilement. Ours is to simply say, I examined this patient, I found this, and my findings are consistent with the alleged circumstances. We cannot say, I can confirm this is defilement. Then it changes everything else. At that point, then you'll be called to the court of law to go and state why you think it was defilement. On the other hand, if you say it is consistent with alleged circumstances, it is because you, as a healthcare worker, in your opinion, you know that what you have found in your examination and what the arresting officer was alleging are consistent, or they don't agree with each other. And you can say that my findings are not consistent with alleged circumstances. If you are called, you say, when I examined, I found this. Yes, there were injuries, but these injuries were attributed to something else and not what this person alleged. And that is our role. So our role is to ensure that we add to the medical jurisprudence of the matter. I thought we look at this very, very well, and this is why we asked that question in the poll. I'm sure by now you are able to see that the majority were not correct, actually. The answer is that we avoid legal terminology. We go to the next slide. So briefly, the 3 slides that I'll show now will show a photograph of the ZP Form 32, the new gazetted ZP Form 32 with its 10 sections. These 10 sections are A, B, C, D, up to J. And this form is stocked by the quartermaster at Zambia Police. However, most health facilities, especially where GBV is examined from, including treatment sites, will have access to this form. This is how page 1 of this form will look like. Let's go to the next slide. Page 2 will have section C, we'll have section F, section E, section F, and section G. Section G, this is where I would want you to particularly take an interest. In these investigations, you'll find that there's an area where you are going to do oral swab, an area where you may do vaginal swab, urethral swab, and rectal swab. The date when these were done, and although the result section is there, you may, of course, indicate the results there in a brief manner and write a comment on the results, or you may actually indicate there and get that result, put it in an envelope and submit it. Now, one may ask and say, why submit these results? First and foremost, it is important that you remain with a copy of these results. Secondly, you must realize that these results are an important medical legal result, and therefore will be of necessity in a court of law. Now, the courts require a certain chain of custody. And if these results do not comply with a set aside or the standard set of chain of custody, may end up raising a lot of issues in the courts of law, which may end up having these results not admitted as part of evidence. And so it is very, very important to have these results attached. Now, the reason we are saying that these results must be put in an envelope, for example, an HIV positive result, you don't want it circulating on a form like this. Although this form is a confidential form and the results there too are confidential, it is important that certain results are placed in an envelope and given to the arresting officer, who in turn takes them for prosecution. So the prosecution's team will actually be the ones that are going to release these results in the courts of law. We can go to the next slide. The next slide is a result of a pictogram. Now, this pictogram is very important. It has been taken in an anatomical position for you to indicate where the injuries are. And of course, write a few comments where you saw these results. You may just indicate by a line, a lineagram, so that these injuries are clearly seen and marked. It is very, very important to do that, because then it helps you to be able to give an exact anatomical position where these injuries were. And obviously, if there were genital injuries, then you could indicate the genital injuries on the genitalia linear diagrams that are provided. Next slide. The last slide is an important slide. That's page 4 of the form, where you indicate clearly what your findings are and what your opinion is. And then you, as the examiner, you sign and you write your title or your designation, and then you date it, and an official stamp is done. It is important that these, the date and the stamp are consistent, because these may actually become issues that may be raised as preliminary issues in the jurisprudence and may end up discrediting the medical report if not clearly done. So you will see that this medical report may not be extensive, but at least it gives us a better beginning compared to the one-leaf, two-sentence medical report that we have had from 1958 up until now, when this form has been changed. If you asked me, I would have loved a 10-paged form, but of course, 4-paged form gives us a good beginning. I thought I should give this overview and just ask for 5 minutes to conclude on the other part. This slide just shows the Gazette notice of Gazette notice number 1008 of 2023, which saw the replacement of the old ZP forms and replacing it with the new ZP32 form, and also gave a transitional period. The transitional period ended in October, actually particularly on 20th October 2023, and going forward from that date, all old forms will not be accepted in the courts of law. We are all expected to fill in this new form by law. Next slide. This next slide talks about how we can now prepare ourselves when going to the courts of law. Are we able to go to the next slide? Thank you.
Yeah.
Actually, there's before that.
Yes, just before that, I think we can do our final poll question. Poll question number 3. As a reminder, you are going to see a pop-up on your screen where you can be able to poll the question as opposed to putting in the chat box. Please use the polling window. So the poll has been launched. If you look at your screen, you will see that the poll has been launched. I will read the question. It's a true or false statement. Medical report findings may be normal, but this does not rule out assault. Medical report findings may be normal, but this does not rule out assault. Is this a true or false statement? Please use the polling window on your screen for you to be able to poll. Indicate if statement is true or false. Medical report findings may be normal, but this does not rule out assault. Is this true or false? IT, I think we can end the poll here and share the results. It shows that 92% of those that polled actually think that this is a true statement, while 8% think that this statement is false. So, Dr. Jonathan, there you have it. You can now conclude the presentation and we'll be able to get back.
Thank you very much. I will ask that we kind of gadgets. Thank you. Great, let's go to the next slide. Thank you very much. Now, even before I start this slide, I must say that I'm very impressed that healthcare workers now know that even if you do not find anything, that does not mean that sexual assault did not take place. And indeed, it is very, very true. A normal finding does not rule out sexual violence. Healthcare workers, when we do examine patients, I call them patients, other people call them survivors, and other people call them victims. When we re-examine our patients, we may be expected to go to the courts of law. I must mention here that it is not always that you'll be called to the courts of law, because your findings will be enough to be helpful for the courts of law to proceed even without calling you in. Just the affidavit that you signed in, the ZP32 form that you signed in would be enough as part of the evidence. 90% of the times, healthcare workers are never called to the courts of law because of clarity in the manner they presented their work. In 10% of the time, healthcare workers may be called to the courts of law, and especially if they are any other cadre apart from being a medical doctor. So, for example, a nurse is likely to be called than a doctor to go and testify in the courts of law. This must not scare you. You are not going to the courts of law as an accused, neither are you going to the courts of law as a lay witness. You are going there either as a factual witness because of your training and you have facts that you have given, or an expert witness because of your training and you did not necessarily attend to this patient. So, for example, Dr. Chawanzi, you may be called because you're a pediatrician, you have not attended to this patient, but another nurse in the department at UTH attended to the patient. So instead of calling the nurse, then they can call you as an expert to go and tell the court what you understand about sexual violence and what these results, how you would interpret these results before the courts of law, so that you help them to understand. So those are called expert witness. So a healthcare provider who examined the survivor may be asked to report on their findings and interpret them before the courts of law. The medical report findings may be normal, but this does not rule out sexual assault, indeed. Now, healthcare workers, sometimes you may be found in a scenario where they ask you to identify who did this. It is never your responsibility. You must ask that your role was restricted to attending to the client and not the person who was accused, and that never at any time did you come in contact with such a person. And it is also important that you meet the prosecutor prior to the session so that you can go through what you had written in your medical report. It is not possible and it is not expected that you remember these things. However, when you see your medical report form prior to the case, maybe a day or a week before, you are able to remember clearly what you did on the patient. And this is very, very important. And I always ask National Prosecutions Authority to ensure that at least a week is given so that healthcare workers are able to locate the file where they wrote their findings so that these help in the medical jurisprudence. Next slide. Now, as healthcare workers, when we are asked to go to the courts of law, our role is to ensure that we tell them what our full name is. And obviously, this question will be guided usually by the prosecuting team. They will guide you to identify yourself, your full name, your full qualifications, and your work experience. This does not demean you as a healthcare worker. It just is procedural so that people who are in the court, especially the court itself, is informed of your qualification. It is not necessary for you to get upset that you are being demeaned. No, you are actually just being introduced. And of course, because of the nature of the case itself, you will be asked to actually give an oath. Now, if you don't believe, if you are not a Christian, you cannot swear or give an oath by the Bible. You will tell them that I am not a Christian. Then you can affirm by your faith, or you can affirm by hand. It is okay. An oath for those that are religious may be given through a religious book. In our country, commonly, it is the Bible that we use, or raising your right hand and you affirm. An affirmation is basically just a declaration to say that what you are telling is the truth. When you are in the courts of law, it is important that you know how to address the court. Usually, these cases are prosecuted for the first time in the subordinate court, and these are called the magistrate court. So if you are in Lusaka, the magistrate court is the one opposite Ridgeway campus, the one in Panbrick. And the court there, irrespective of their gender, it's your honor. So you call them your honor. But should you be caught to a court of appeal, then the male court is called, you can say my lord or your lordship. The female, you call them my lady, or you can call them usually it's my lady. And then when you are giving your testimony in court, it's called the examination in chief. Now, once you have given this examination, usually these cases are defended. So the court, they will ask then the lawyer or the attorney for the defendant to ask you questions to clarify. These questions sometimes may be tricky, but the most important thing is that you answer yes or no and avoid volunteering any other information that has not been asked. It is very, very important to not volunteer any new information. Restrict yourself to what you wrote. And then if the questions are confusing, do not argue with them. You may ask the court to clarify, or you may say, I don't know. I don't know is also an answer in the court. It is very important because what the other lawyer is doing is just trying to ensure that they discredit your examination in chief or your testimony so that it does not incriminate their client. Your role is not to incriminate anyone. Your role is to help with the medical jurisprudence so that the correct person or the correct thing is done. Once cross-examination has been done, the prosecution team will re-examine you so that you can answer those questions that were confusing and you make clarification. Usually this happens. The only thing I always tell my colleagues is that do not at any time lose temper in the courts of law. Do not have emotions. Do not allow your emotions to override your judgment and to override what you have done already. The court is not meant to frustrate you. Of course, we are human beings, but just make sure that you remain as imperturbed as possible. Next slide. Now, the day of the court is very important for all of us. In this country, I have not come across the code of dressing before the court. However, it is very important that we are representative. I remember one time I was in Sorwezi before the court of law, and I was called in as an expert witness. I met a nurse there. She was smartly dressed in her uniform. You don't necessarily have to go in a uniform. Dress appropriately. Appropriate dressing is something that is universally acceptable. For males, I always say a good trousers. Maybe you may go back on the pole. Let's not go into the pole. Okay, thank you. For males, a good trousers, a nice, well-ironed shirt. If you are like me, like wearing neckties, you can put on a necktie. If you love suits, you can put on a suit. You don't necessarily have to be in a suit. Just clean, well-kept, well-groomed. For ladies, a nice dress is okay. You don't have to wear black dresses, which lawyers dress. It's just a nice dress. Something that is presentable. Of course, it can't be a hipster. neither can it be skin-tight jeans. I think those, not that the court will say no, but may not speak of you correctly. And when you are talking in the courts of law, observe the hand of the court, observe the hand of the magistrate, that you say, including a comma. Maintain eye contact with whoever you are speaking to and avoid medical jargon as much as possible. Answer questions as professionally as possible in plain language, and do not answer to questions whose answer you don't know. I don't know is also an answer. Never try to guess. Never try to guess. It may be a trap. Ask for clarifications, of course, where questions are not clear. But one thing I'll emphasize here is that never try to guess in the court of law. And when you don't know, simply say, Your Honor, my lady, your lordship, my lord, your lordship, I actually do not know the answer to that question. I don't know. Okay, it is okay not to know an answer. Great, maybe we can go into a poll now.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mwansa. Now we are going to repoll the questions. So IT, kindly help us just to repoll because we are now at the end of this presentation. Okay, so the first poll question has been launched on your screens. It reads, in the newly gazetted ZP32 form, which of the following are mandated to sign the form? A, medical doctors only. B, medical doctors, even when not trained in multidisciplinary training or MDT. C, all healthcare workers registered by the Nursing and Midwifery Act and or HPCZ Act and trained in MDT. So we won't take too much time for these 4 questions because these are repos. We just want to quickly gauge if learning has taken place. IT, you can end the poll and share the results. So, Dr. Mwansa, 96% think that C is the answer. We still have a small minority, 4%, that think only medical doctors are allowed to sign. And I saw in the chat box, there were quite a number of questions around if COGs can sign now and if there's anything written that we can give to facilities, because I think in many facilities, some COGs are still not allowed to sign these reports. Please go over the answer to this question, Dr. Mwansa.
Thank you very much. Indeed, I want to say that learning has really taken place because we now are able to know that the new ZP32 form is can be signed by any healthcare worker that has been trained in multidisciplinary training. MDT is multidisciplinary training, and also is that person must also be registered under either Act number 10 of 2019 or Act number 24 of 2009. These 2 acts, the Nursing and Midwifery Act and also the HPCZ Act. The reason is because these are easier to discipline. If something wrong happened, then people can report you to your counsel, and the counsel will take care of your disciplinary issues. The smaller number that has answered that it's only medical doctors, actually things are changing now, and we have allowed everyone else to sign. Yes, indeed, Ministry of Health will at one point be able to write a circular so that each one of us are aware that even clinical officer general, medical licentiates, nurses, midwives can sign this form. Now, this form is not just restricted to the GBV. It is the only medical form available for medical legal purposes in our country at the moment. And this is one of the reasons we have opened it up. The other reason is that not all facilities will have a luxury of having medical licentiates and doctors. These are not always available. You can imagine you're at Kamoto Hospital, you're at Libuyu Clinic, maybe Libuyu now because it's in town as a clinic, as a doctor, but you could be at Senkobo where there is no doctor. The whole Kalomo, maybe there are only 3 doctors. So Senkobo will not have a luxury of having a doctor. And so, but these cases will go to Senkobo, and who is going to sign if you say only a doctor can sign? Let's ensure that even as we sign, we remember our professional etiquettes, because should we be found to have misconducted ourselves, our different councils will discipline us. Why would you lose your license over a tungwe when you could have accrued that along the way? So these are some of the things that we look at. Let's go to the next poll.
IT, we can launch the second poll question. The second poll question has been launched, and we'll just take about 30 seconds for this one. It's a true or false statement. It is important to clearly indicate the legal definitions such as defilement, rape, or assault when stating your final opinion of the findings. Is that true or false? It is important to clearly indicate the legal definitions such as defilement, rape, or assault when stating your final opinion of the findings. True or false? The answers are coming in. IT, you can end the poll here and just share the results. IT, please share the results. So, Dr. Mwansa, for this one, we have 74% thinking that this is false, while we have 26%, which is quite significant, thinking that this is true. Please take us through this one, Dr. Mwansa.
Thank you. Thank you very much, moderator. Again, I would still say that learning has taken place because at least 74% know that it is very important to stay away from legal definitions. Our role as healthcare workers is to restrict ourselves to what we are trained in. Our role in this case is to simply be able to say whether the circumstances alleged are consistent with our findings. Our findings cannot be the one to say that this is defilement, this is rape. Why? Because rape or defilement or assault are legal definition. So we leave Caesar to deal with what belongs to Caesar. Our role is to deal with what belongs to us. If you find an injury on my face and somebody said that the policeman said that Dr. Mwansa was struck with a whip on the face, and you find a whip line injury on my face, you say that they found an injury measuring 2 centimeters long, 1 millimeter wide, 1 millimeter deep, with indurated edges, consistent with the alleged circumstances. Therefore, the police will now go and take to the court, and the court will say, yes, the circumstances alleged here are consistent, and this, therefore, as the police officer has quoted in the books of law, is assault. And that is how we do it. It is not for us as healthcare workers to make a definition of assault, of rape, of defilement, because our role is to just show that the findings that are found on my examination are clearly pointing to what you have alleged, and not to say what you have, not to be the omega and say, yes, what you have alleged is this, and I can confirm it is rape. No. What if it is not rape? It is something else, because the court will now look at several other instances to now make that definition. So, colleagues, the answer here is B. It is false. It is not our responsibility to make a legal definition. Thank you very much. I think there were 3 polls. Huh? We go to poll number 3.
So IT, help us launch the final poll question, which we'll quickly discuss, and then we can give chance to other experts to weigh in as well. Because I know we have this is a very interesting topic. Poll question number 3 has been launched. If you look at your screens, you'll be able to poll in. Medical report findings may be normal, but this does not rule out assault. Medical report findings may be normal, but this does not rule out assault. Is this true or false? I think Dr. Mwansa had also belabored on this point, so we won't take too much time on this one. Just giving it a few more seconds. Medical report findings may be normal, but this does not rule out assault. Is this true or false? IT, please share the answers. We have 98% thinking that this is true, while the small minority, 2%, still think that this is false. Dr. Mwansa.
Thank you very much. Absolutely. And I think I'm very happy that the learning here has absolutely taken place. A normal finding does not rule out sexual assault. A normal finding does not rule out rape. A normal finding does not rule out assault. It just means that you, as an examiner, was not able to find anything that says, yes, this was it. And therefore, you can't say there was no rape, but you just say, maybe this is not consistent with the alleged circumstances, but you are not saying that there is no rape that has taken place under the circumstances. And I think that it is very important as healthcare workers to know our limits and the limitations of our general physical examination, that not always we will find positive findings. Sometimes no findings may also be a good finding. In the chat box, I saw a very important question that I would wish to respond to, where the author was asking me whether these forms are different from the regular forms. So, Patricia, what we are saying here is that you used an iPhone, so it's called Patricia's iPhone. So I'll call you Patricia's iPhone. The forms, all forms that were being used in the past, as at July 28, 2023, have been dropped. They no longer exist. They belong to the past. They belong to the archive. From that date to date, and until such a time when this form will be revised, the Zambia Police has gazetted the new form. And this new form allows all healthcare workers to be able to sign it. Now, what our responsibility is to ensure that all healthcare workers are oriented in this form. And those that have chance to attend a multidisciplinary training, an MDT, may also be able to learn this from an MDT, because then they will be properly trained. For those that are still in a postgraduate, this includes the STP and other forms of postgraduate training and undergraduate training. These will be incorporated in the curricula so that you are able to learn with it as you pass through your school. This then will allow everyone else to know how to fill in the form. If you are not trained, do not be afraid. It is important that you request that you are oriented in these things. Believe you me, we'll always be available to help out in these forms. If you are in Lusaka, it is easier to go to the Pediatric Center of Excellence or the Adult Center of Excellence and learn how to fill in this form. In the Northern Circuit, Copper Belt, Central Province, Luapula, Muchinga, Northern and Northwestern Province, at least there I'll confirm to you that I'll be going around the provinces to try and do on-site teaching. And I'm sure Dr. Wupe on the other side will also be able to help out in terms of training people on how to use these forms on-site. Thank you very much, moderator.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mwansa. It has been a really good presentation, and it has evoked a lot of discussion, as you can see from the chat box. Very, very busy. And I also want to say thank you to our experts, Dr. Gupi Musonda and Chali Hambayi. And so, I mean, I forgot that Dr. Mwansa loves to teach, and he was going to take his time during this presentation. And so in the last 7 minutes, I just want to invite some of the other experts on the call to just give their final thoughts, because as you can see, we only have 7 minutes to 4. So I want to start off with Madam Gloria Mubita. Madam Gloria Mubita, are you connected from the Zambia Police Victim Support Unit? We may not have Madam Gloria Mubita. I can see a hand from Daniel. Daniel, is that a question or a comment?
Actually, it's a question which I wanted just to find out from Doc. I hear he mentioned about the record keeping on PV, or I may say the said form. How do we keep the same form in the health sector? Because what I've observed normally is that when a patient comes or when a client comes, when she has been attended to, it goes back with that form. But for us, we only record. But how do we keep also as a reference to it? Because it's a new gazetted and things have changed as in for now. So you can try to advise on this one.
Thank you so much, Daniel. We'll take Alfred and Raul as well. And then Dr. Wupe Musonda and Dr. Rockaya, I'll give you a chance to respond to these questions. Alfred? Alfred Walia.
Thank you, Chair. I have 2 questions. Number 1. Yes, thank you, Chair. The first one is on the
Alfred, you're not very clear.
The MD or okay. Is it only those that are trained in MDT, or even when you're not trained in MDT, you can sign? Then the second question is, usually in my where I went from, the police nearest to us usually runs out of these forms. They come written in ink. Am I supposed to sign that one that is written in ink? Or to send back that survivor, but get a printed one?
Okay. Thank you so much, Alfred. Dr. Musonda, you can take 2 of the 3 questions. Dr. Msondavupe. If Dr. Vupe Msonda is not available, Dr. Rockaya Ginwala, are you still connected?
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you very much for the great presentation, Jonathan. My comments regarding the records. First of all, we have a big problem when we go around the country to most of the sites out there in the rural areas. We don't find any medical records. So we just have somewhere where in a book where you're documenting that you've seen such and such a client. It's important to keep a record, the medical record at the center. So when you're called to court, you also have some reference point. Because there are times when they can ask you a question that did the survivor mention the name of the victim? And if you don't have your notes, you don't even know where you're, what you're going to say. And then regarding, in the same vein, a copy of the police medical record should go with those notes. So what we do here is that we photocopy every police form before the original goes back to the police. So we keep a record of both the medical record and the police form. And this really helps because when you're called to court, you have some reference point, you have some way of going back to the notes that you wrote and familiarizing yourself with the incident. So that's the one question. The second question was about the MDT training. I think ideally it would be good for people who have been trained to sign the form, but the situation currently is that not everybody has been trained in MDT. Jonathan, I don't know what your comment would be regarding this, but looking at how the shortages we have, and if you have a case where there's clear evidence, I think you could still go ahead and sign the form. That's my opinion. Regarding the issue of police running out of forms, I don't think you can sign a form that is handwritten. It has to have the Zambia police logo. It will not go in court if you sign a form which doesn't have the printed form without the police logo on it. Because for it to be admissible in court, it has to have it has to be an original police form. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ginwala, for those comments. Dr. Msondavupe.
Thank you, Dr. Muma. Thank you, Dr. Mwansa, for the presentation. The only addition I had really was just to encourage our team that we shouldn't always be in a hurry to write our findings or just to submit a police report, because sometimes our results, the investigation results, do take a bit of time, and you find some evidence that might be stronger to help push your case along. But if you've already submitted the case before based on your clinical findings, when you go to court, it comes out as new evidence and you're questioned further. So I really feel that even though we're pressed for time, it's always better to wait till we have all the investigations in, especially those that we feel will strengthen our case in the courts of law. Thank you.
So much, Dr. Msonda. Colleagues, allow me to ask Chali Hambayi from the NPA to just give a few comments as well. Chali.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mwansa, for the wonderful presentation and for having the NPA on this learning platform. So basically what I'd want to say is that I think there was a question that was posed to the effect that sometimes victims are given the medical report once the examination has been conducted at the hospital. But from what I know, the practice now or the new direction is that a victim should not be given that medical report, because sometimes the victim will use that medical report as leverage to go back to the community to try and negotiate with the perpetrator, like, oh, look, the medical report is showing you defiled my child, you must give me 5 cows. This morning, my advocates and I were also discussing a case where a father molested his daughter, had sexual intercourse with her. And then the mother initially reported the matter to the police, but later on she recanted. So she turned hostile. But she had been given the medical report and it went missing. And so we had a lot of trouble trying to find, a backup copy. Luckily at UTH, as Dr. Ginwala has stated, they keep a backup copy. So what the practice should be is that medical report should be given to the police officer, the investigating officer. Once you have done your investigations, and as Dr. Musonda said, even your labs, everything, you attach to that medical report and give it to the dealing officer, not to the victim or to a witness, because we may find ourselves in awkward situations where reports have gone missing. And even the issue of waiting on the laboratory investigations, it's critical that you wait, as Dr. Musonda has stated, if you have done any further investigations, because you may find your initial finding may be consistent with the allegation. Maybe you saw some redness, and then the laboratory examination tests come out, the person has got a UTI or something that could have caused that redness, and then you end up retracting or you fill in another medical report, and then you may have to, and it's happened, we've had situations where now we have 2 medical reports. So which one are we going to believe? So even if the police are pressuring you to sign, we have told the police that the medical report is not a silver bullet. It is not the only thing that is going to help us to secure a conviction. So they should bring the victim to the hospital, medical examination conducted, but they should continue with their investigations as they wait for the medical reports, because it is this issue of rushing the health practitioners to quickly, medical equity, and this is what causes sometimes the awkwardness or a predicament that the health practitioner may find themselves in. And also, I would just like to comment on the issue of a medical report not having specific findings. That does not mean that the case is weak. Depending on the circumstances of the case, we may still secure a conviction at court. So case in point is Winford Mapapai, Supreme Court decision, where the medical report did not have specific findings. But the doctor was able to explain that it's not in all cases that you have specific findings. Doesn't mean that there was no defilement. And the fact that the victim had bathed, she went to the hospital maybe 3 days later, all those are factors that can render an examination not having any specific findings, but that doesn't mean that the case is weak. So we'd still be able to argue it out as prosecutors. And a key component that Dr. Mwansa talked about is the officer or the health practitioner giving a legal definition. In your findings, as you state, consistent with allegation, you're not supposed to say consistent with allegation, this is a case of incest, because you do not know the ingredients of incest. So if you come to court and the defense counsel asks you, so what are the ingredients of incest? What factors do you need to prove incest? Do you know the prohibited categories of consanguinity, So then you will find yourself in a bind and you'll be discredited. So it is important to stay away from the legal definitions, rape, incest, defilement, indecent assault, and so on and so forth. So you keep it strictly to what you have observed and whether it's consistent with the allegation. The issue as well of having court preparation is very, very important. You need to meet your prosecutor before you go to court. And I know sometimes the prosecution service may not be perfect. There are some lapses here and there, but you must insist that you meet the prosecutor before you take the stand. You go through the medical reports. There are many, many medical reports that you will sign. So it's not that you have, this medical report or the information at the back of your head. You need to refresh yourself. You need to look at the notes that you took in your history. And that history is also quite rich. It's something that we can rely on in court. So it's important that you take as many contemporaneous notes as possible as you conduct your examination. With regard to the ZP32 form, I don't know if some of you have noticed from the NPS side, we have been sending back medical reports that have been signed after the date of 28 November using the old form. So don't be alarmed. We are just trying to keep sanity in the criminal justice system and ensure that the proper medical report is filled in. Because if we use the medical report, the Gazette notice is very categorical. It says that any examination that is conducted after 28th of November using the old medical report cannot be produced in evidence. So we have certain cases where the medical evidence is the key issue, is what we are relying on as the state. So if that was filled in on an old form, we we are sending them back. So we just ask that you bear with us. You just refill the medical report on the new form. The police is trying to put their house in order, and with the support of partners, we're trying to ensure that all the police stations, police posts are availed with a new medical report form, and sufficient quantities are also availed to them so that we ensure that all the medical reports that are being issued after November 28th are in conformity with the Gazette notice and the news at P32 form. So for now, I think that's what I can say. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Chali. That is Chali from NPA. She's a lawyer by profession, and she usually prosecutes, she takes some of these cases on. So that was really informative from you, Chali, and thank you so much for coming through. Unfortunately, colleagues, we are out of time. Now we are 7 minutes past 4. So I'll just read Dr. Ginwala's comment, and then I'll ask for some closing comments from Dr. Mwansa, and then we can call it a wrap. So Dr. Ginwala is saying that before we end, I wanted to bring to everyone's attention that it's important to put your phone number, okay? Your phone number on, It's important to put your phone number on the police form as well, because in the new form, this information is missing, but this information helps the police officers to get in touch with you easily. With that, I want to just invite Dr. Mwansa, who gave us the presentation, to just give some final remarks. Dr. Mwansa, I'll limit you to about a minute, and then we can wrap it up. Dr. Mwansa.
Thank you very much, moderator. Mine is to thank everyone who attended this discussion, and we will continue having these discussions. And indeed, there was a very important and hot question of in the absence of a person trained in MDT who signs the form. Colleagues, even when you are not trained, you could actually sign, because remember, we are in the transitioning period. You can sign. Nothing will be held against you, but it will be important that we are all trained so that we can all speak the same language, so that we avoid making unnecessary costly mistakes. I would like to encourage each one of us to be alert, astute, and ensure that we do the correct thing. And of course, it does not take away from you when you consult from a colleague. Let's also learn to consult from each other. Thank you very much, moderator.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mwansa. That was a very informative session. Colleagues, we were looking at SGBV, particularly signing medical police report forms and court expectations, as has been said. The form that we used to use, the old form, 1 page, I think it had maybe 2 or 3 sections, has been done away with as of last year. And so you will see that when these survivors or victims or patients come through, they'll come with a new form that has been presented today. We will share this presentation via various WhatsApp groups. You should be able to see it on your iEcho platform as well, and you'll be able to download this presentation. There were some people that were asking for this presentation. I want to thank particularly our experts who were on the call and ready and responding to the questions in the chat box. It was very busy. I can see that a lot of information has been shared. So thank you so much. And thank you to the participants that have stayed on with us. We are 10 minutes past 4 p.m. And thank you so much for having made the time to be with us. We'll have another session next week on HIV/TB ECHO platform. It will be a different topic, obviously, and I will encourage that you can be able to log in. Tomorrow, we have a special session. It will be on clinical utility of low molecular weight heparin. The time will be from 12 hours to 13 hours. It will just be for 1 hour. I've been your host, Malilwe Muhuma, with the Lusaka Provincial Health Office. Thank you so much for attending today's session from me and the colleagues in the background. It's bye-bye. Have a good afternoon and have a pleasant rest of the week. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. It was a good presentation.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Excellent presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.
Wow, that was a great presentation. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Yeah, my presentation is